Hi guys, welcome to the first screencast on the automation Selenium series. As you know that my name is Bini Sethi and I'm the organizer for the meetup group Let's Learn Programming from Novice to Ninja. So this screencast is for anybody who participated in our meetup on 15th November or anybody who unfortunately missed our first session, so that you guys can come up to the speed quickly and even you can refresh and pick up from where we left off. Moving ahead, on 15th November in our first meetup session, we focused on 5 learning objectives. The first one was, what is a test automation framework? The second learning objective was, what are the different themes and trends in the automation industry today, and how different automation suites can help address those trends and themes. The third one is, what is Selenium and why we are using Selenium? What makes Selenium so popular? The fourth learning objective, which we emphasized on in our meetup, was a high-level architecture of Selenium as well. The fifth one is configuring Selenium using IntelliJ on the Mac operating system. As you guys already know that we had a deep dive during our first meetup around the 5 learning outcomes, which are outlined here. So in this screencast, I'll be only providing the high-level details of what we discussed, and I'll be directly jumping to the 5th outcome, that is configuring Selenium on IntelliJ on the Mac operating system. So guys, before I move ahead, I would like to emphasize 2 key points here. The first thing is, if you are a Windows user and you are using Eclipse as an IDE, so the good news is the high-level steps of configuring Selenium remains the same, irrespective of the operating system. So if you guys still find any kind of confusion or any kind of error, please feel free to Slack me. The second point is, I'm assuming that you have IntelliJ, either the Community Edition or the Ultimate Edition, already stored on your Mac operating system, and even your Java SDKs enabled and set up as well. So let's move ahead. The first learning outcome which we discussed was, what is a test automation framework? So in my opinion, in the most simplest form, a test automation framework is a scaffolding that is laid to provide an execution environment for the automation test scripts, which means that these kind of frameworks provides the user with various benefits that help them to develop, execute, and report the automation test scripts efficiently. So that's what a summary of what a test automation framework looks like. The second key thing which I really want to emphasize is the trends and themes in the automation industry. So as you might be transitioning from a manual testing background, or you guys might already be an automation consultant. So when your organization asks you, hey, we want to implement automation, it is always good to know what kind of themes and trends exist in the industry, because I feel that this knowledge will help you, aid you, or suggest you to put the right recommendations of the automation framework to the problem your organization is trying to solve. So a couple of themes in my opinion are data-driven automation frameworks. Then we have module-based testing automation frameworks. We have keyword-driven testing automation frameworks present. Hybrid testing automation frameworks. Behavior-driven development frameworks, and linear scripting frameworks as well. Guys, as we actually delved into a lot of details during our session on 15th November, so I will not deep dive in these themes. If you guys want more details or still confused, please feel free to reach out to me on the Slack channel. Now, once we know what the themes are, I would like to present the top 9 popular test automation suites of frameworks that enables these themes or trends. So let's move ahead and see what those top 9 themes are. Selenium. So that is the focus of this series as well. So when we are using Selenium, so Selenium is actually used for automating your web applications. If you have a website and if you want to automate it, Selenium is the right tool for you to go. TestNG. So TestNG is a testing framework for the Java programming language. So at the time when TestNG came into existence, the design goal for TestNG was to cover a wide range of test categories. Call it unit testing, functional testing, end-to-end testing, integration testing. And it's a powerful framework as well. The third is Cucumber. So Cucumber basically focuses on behavior-driven development, and we would be speaking a lot about Selenium and Cucumber in the upcoming series. The fourth one is the Spock framework. So Spock framework, I have not used it much, but I had played around it a bit lightly. So it's a testing and specific framework for Java and Ruby applications. One thing which I really loved about Spock framework was it has like seamless integration with all the IDEs available. It's also compatible with different build tools and continuous integration servers. So it's a worth candidate to play around with. Another is Mockito. So Mockito is a mocking framework. It's a Java-based library that is used for effective unit testing of Java applications. Moving ahead, we have DB-Unit. So those people who have worked in JUnit, DB-Unit is an extension of JUnit, and it's specifically targeted at database-driven projects. I have heavily used it, so if you have any queries, please feel free to reach out. Spring Test. So Spring Test is based on the popular Spring MVC framework. It's pretty cool to have a look around this framework as well. The last one is Report framework. I have not personally used it, but as per my knowledge, it basically targets the ATDD, which is Acceptance Test Driven Development. So these are the top 9 frameworks which are heavily popular in the industry today, and we would be focusing on Selenium. Let's move ahead. So what is Selenium and why Selenium? First thing, Selenium is an open source automation testing tool. You don't need to pay anything, which is great. The second thing is it's used for web-based applications. Again, if you have a web application which you really want to automate, Selenium is the go-to framework to use. Third one, Selenium supports multiple browsers. It has beautiful support from Chrome perspective, Firefox, Safari, IE, Opera as well. Fourth one, it really supports multiple platforms. Talk about Windows, Linux, Mac operating system. And the other important aspect in Selenium is Selenium clients can be coded in multiple languages. It has a support for Java, C#, Python, JavaScript, Ruby, PHP. And there is a way to verify that which languages as client Selenium supports, and I'll show that to you in a minute. So this is a high-level summary of why is Selenium. And so if you want an open source tool, Selenium. If you want to automate your web-based applications, it's beautiful. It has a good industry support. So that is why Selenium. Before going ahead and talking about how we can configure Selenium in our development machines, it's important to talk about some high-level architecture. The first thing, when you write automation testing scripts in any of the languages like C# or Java or Python, these are known as Selenium clients. So you can write your test scripts in any of the languages which I mentioned earlier. These are known as Selenium clients. So once you have written it, this test scripts gets converted into an intermediate form, that is a JSON format. When any kind of request is invoked, the intermediate transition is to a JSON format. And then it starts interacting with the web drivers, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. So Selenium gives drivers for each browser. Like if you're gonna test your application in Firefox, you will be needing a Firefox driver. If it's Chrome, it would be a Chrome driver. IE is an IE driver, and Safari is a Safari driver. So these browser drivers more act as interfaces between the client and the browser itself. So once the call goes to the browser driver, it interacts with the browsers over HTTP or over HTTPS. And that's how the high-level architecture goes. In my earlier days when I was learning Selenium, the most important question in my mind was, why we are using these browser drivers. So the best way for a newbie or a beginner to remember is it's acting as an interface. It gives you a seamless integration with these browsers. You don't need to really fiddle with the nitty-gritty of each browser. So just take it as an API interface, which is a friendly interface, and you can do a handshake using these browser drivers. Good. Now, as we have understood the architecture of Selenium right now is the time for real action. Let's move ahead. So I'll be quitting this PowerPoint, and I'm assuming that we are ready to really integrate Selenium on our operating system. So the first step, download and install Eclipse or IntelliJ. So in my machine, I have already installed IntelliJ Ultimate Edition. You can use a free edition as well, which is known as a community edition. So for your guys, a specific reference, community edition or ultimate edition. Okay, now the next step is, once you have installed either of these IDs, you have to download the jar files from the Selenium website. So what we do is we're going to go to the Selenium website now. Let's go ahead. Let's open the Chrome browser and we say seleniumhq.org. Okay. All right. So now you can see we are on the Selenium website, and we can go here to download the Selenium WebDriver. So if you click on download and you come here, you can see that these are the languages at this moment Selenium supports as Selenium clients. You can code in Ruby, JavaScript, Java, Python, and C#. For the purpose of this series, I'm specifically talking Java. So we would be downloading all the jar files against the Java edition. So I've already installed it on my machine. I've already downloaded these jar files. So let me show you. So this was the place where I actually downloaded those jar files. And if you can see, the structure looks like this. You have the client combined jar and the client combined sources jar. And there is a lib folder underneath it where all the dependent jars would be present. So these are all the jars which we need for Selenium integration. So now, what is the next step? Let's open the IntelliJ IDE. Cool. Okay. So I'd already configured it on the meetup, so I'll do it from scratch again. So you can say go to new, you can say project, what kind of project you need. I'll be creating a Java project. You can definitely see here that my project SDK is configured to 1.8. I would say simply next, and I'll say create project from a template. It's just that it will create one client program with a method main. I'll say next, and I'll give my project a name. I can say it as, what do we call it? Selenium series. And I have a base package com.insprove. I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to say that download in this or open in this particular window. So now you can see that we have a project structure created. We have a source folder. This is where our package is created, and this is the client which I was talking about. So this is where all of our source code would go. Any external libraries will go into this folder. So now, if we go back to our PowerPoint and we see what is the third step. The third step is we have to set up our jar files to use Selenium, which is this one. Okay, cool. So go to the Selenium project, and you can say project structure, From here, you can go to modules, and in module, I can start adding my dependencies. So if I click on this one, I would say I want add jars because I have already downloaded Selenium jars. So what I will do is I'll be going to the place where I actually downloaded. So if I can see, where did I download? Okay. Okay. Here we go. So this is where I had downloaded all of my Selenium jars. So first, I will configure these two jars. And I'll say open. And you can see that it has added those two jar files on my class path. Now what I will do is I'll give it a go again, and I will say that go to this particular folder and also include all of these dependent libs as well. So once I've done that, you can see now all of these jar files are present here, which were basically downloaded from seleniumhq.org. I could say apply, and I would say okay. Cool. Now, the most important thing which we need to remember here is, if you go back to the architecture diagram, which I had showed you earlier, that we have downloaded the client, included the jars. Now we need to configure our drivers for the specific browsers which we want to use, or build our automation test scripts against. So my personal favorite is basically Firefox. So I will be downloading the Firefox driver. So step one, what I'll be doing is downloading the Firefox driver for Selenium. Okay, so if I go to Firefox and I say gecko Firefox driver GitHub, you can go here and from this particular GitHub's repository, you can download the driver, latest driver compatible to your browser. But hey, there's a catch here. First of all, before downloading any of the jars from this particular space, let's go and check what version of Firefox you are using. So I'm using a version greater than 60, which is 70.0.1. So the catch here is, you will see that this particular driver version supports anything which is greater than version 60, which means that I'm using a 70.0.01 version. This is the driver which I need to download. And I would be actually downloading this one on my personal PC. As I had already mentioned that I have already downloaded these things. So if I go back and show you guys, so you can see here in the drivers folder, I have downloaded the Gecko driver, which is a Firefox driver for Selenium. I have personally downloaded and put it in this location. That's what you need to do as step one. Download the driver which is specific to the browser you want to use. Okay, so once you have done that, the other step which we need to do is basically telling the system that you want to basically use this particular driver. You have to give the path in your IDE. So I can go and copy and paste here, because this is an exact location where my driver is installed at this moment, or where the jar is placed. Once I've done that, what I can do is I can go ahead and say WebDriver is equal to what WebDriver I want to use. I want to use Firefox, and I can say dot get open me the site Google, let's say. Cool. Let's compile and run this program now. That's the magic, that you install the Firefox driver, you have set the system property, and you have used the WebDriver version to say that, hey, open me the site google.com. So it was as simple as that. Coming back on a high level steps, guys, remember that download your IDE, download your jars from the Selenium website, set up your project. Most important thing to remember is every web browser come up with its own driver. So make sure that you have downloaded the exact driver for the web browser you want to use. You have to set the property, otherwise it would give an exception if you don't give it. You invoke what kind of driver you want to use, and you can use the get method, which takes in string argument and say, hey, which site you want to open. So I'm hoping that this particular screencast was valuable for you guys, and you are able to configure Selenium on your Mac operating system. Another way to maintain these dependencies like Selenium jars or the driver jars is using Maven dependencies, which I'm not focusing on this particular screencast. I will show you how easy it is to manage your jar dependencies using another dependency management tool, which is known as Maven. And yeah, that's it for this web series. Just let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully this particular video was helpful for you guys. Thank you and have a good day.